So for any Longhorns in the room, I can actually have that announced with pride after this past weekend. Can I just get a hook 'em horns from anyone who happened to watch that awesome game this past weekend? So I feel like whoever sequenced the speakers did a great job, because some of the topics that were brought up actually flow very nicely into what I'm going to talk about today, which is digital workforce transformation. And thank you for the comment, because technology is at the core, and it is important, and we can't forget that. So don't get kind of like wah, wah, wah. I'm going to start with a little history here. The very wise Heraclitus said back in 475 BC that the only constant is change. So fast forward to today, and the only constant we feel that we face is the ever increasing pace of change. And I'm sure you can all feel that, whether it's at work or in your personal life or with your kids or anything, right? There's just constant change happening. And it puts a lot of pressure on organizations, and it really changes kind of how we have to work. And there's three things I want to call out specifically, just in terms of kind of how that rapid pace of change is evolving how we work and how we run HR. One is the dynamic workforce, right? The types of workers that are in the workforce are constantly changing. I think 10 years ago, we didn't talk about anything like the gig economy. That was not even a term we talked about. But now we're trying to, manage situations. I mean, think about, where we're sitting, WeWork, right? That concept wasn't necessary, not that many years ago. And so just the definition of who is your employee and where are they working and what is their relationship with you, very different. Also the technology shifts, right? As we were just saying, technology is critical. With all this change, technology is not only causing the change, but it's also helping us deal with the change. And then, you can call it the millennial effect, but call it any generation. As we were just talking about, right? Employees' expectations are changing. A lot of companies, in the last probably 5 to 10 years have been on this evolution of customer first. But the smart companies are realizing that it's employees first. Because when you take care of your employees, they'll take care of your customers. And there's a lot of competition, right? The war on talent is not this kind of fake thing. Employees are consumers too, and they will shop around. And there's one quote specifically that I love, and whether he's loved or hated right now because of some of the issues going on at Facebook, but I love how Mark Zuckerberg says, treat your employees well so they're not using your internet to find their next job. Right? It's true. And so, think about that ever increasing pace of change, and think about the fact that any process in your organization that was designed 3 years ago is already outdated. And that probably doesn't feel like a long time. I know, I think about, some of those things about being a curator and, an implementer and all those different things that HR does. Sometimes you're so exhausted by the time you get that big change out there, you want to rest for a little while. But I'm here to tell you, you can't because, 3 years. And I'll give a non-work example. I have a almost preteen daughter who started middle school this year. And that's when I guess I learned through the grapevine that that's when you have to have the cell phone conversation, like is the kid going to get a cell phone or not? And my daughter made a very good argument, I think she's going to be an attorney, that it was like social life homicide if I didn't give her one. And my husband and I are like, well, you lose everything, so we don't want to give you a new one. So we tried to give her, I think it was like an iPhone 5. And she looked at me like I was the worst mother ever, and was like, this is mom, like I can't go to school and be seen with this. But it just goes to show, right, that rapid pace. See, I get some snickers because you probably have had that conversation with your child. But it goes, right? And think about the fact that not that long from now, those are the people who are coming into your workforce, right? They expect modern, current experiences. And it doesn't just happen with products, or process. It's from a strategy perspective too. And what we're seeing working with as many customers as we do at SAP, those companies that are focusing on agility are the companies that are getting ahead, right? Those companies that are doing that kind of that balance of some stability, right? Agility is not about anything goes, you can do whatever you want. But having that balance of stability and some dynamic nature can really allow you to respond to that change that's happening. It allows you to think about curating, right? That's a great word, I love that. Curating a new strategy in an kind of in an evolutionary basis, right? Because what worked a few years ago isn't going to keep you competitive. It isn't going to keep you current, and you're not going to be able to attract the right employees, but also potentially not the right innovation for your company. And so those companies that are agile are thinking about how they're tooling their workforce to be ready for that change, because the employees are at the heart, right? They're at the core. And when you have employees that are ready to adapt to that change, they're ready to kind of shift when the market shifts, they're going to be the ones that are going to help you stay competitive and stay ahead. And that's taking new skills, and that's also kind of proving that the jobs that exist today might not be the jobs that exist in 10 to 20 years. There's an Oxford study that says that 60% of the jobs that those kids who are just starting grade school this year will have when they finish schooling don't exist today. Think about that. That's a lot of jobs. My younger daughter, so I have one in middle school, my younger daughter just started kindergarten, so she's part of that generation. She wants to be a unicorn princess. But maybe in 20 years that will be a thing, right? Maybe. And so getting back to digital transformation, I promise I'm going to stop talking about my kids now. But getting back to digital transformation, I think what's important to think about when you think about it is it's not just something you do, it's a mindset. It is really changing the way that you run the company. And it goes back to some of the things that you were talking about from a culture perspective. It does start with the leadership. That is really a linchpin. But to take some of the design thinking lessons that we just learned, which is why I said it's good timing, it also is about putting your users at the center. And I think most of the folks in the room here are HR practitioners. That is putting your employees at the center and using things like design, like concepts like design thinking to say, how are the changes that we're going to be rolling out as an organization, or the path that we're going to go on as an organization, how is that impacting our employees? And then wrapping around that, things like, how does technology fit in? How does leadership, what role do they play? What's the working environment? But this is really where you really get into the digital transformation mindset. And it's not just about, oh, we're going to change our system or we're going to roll out a new policy. It's around we're part of this constant digital transformation mindset that's ready to adjust and adapt and shift with the ever-changing market that we all live in. I'll end on just one note. Just by show of hands, how many organizations here have undergone some type of HR transformation in the last 5 years? Lots of hands, right? And from experience, I can say a lot of times, maybe 3, 5, 7 years ago, the transformation was all around automation. We have to automate, get rid of the paper, get rid of the Excel Olympics, and really do smarter HR. And what I'm here to tell you is that's great. That's a foundation. Because when you free up that time, that's not the destination, that's not the finish line. When you free up that time by automating, that's when you actually free up the time to actually get to truly transformational HR, where you're using data, where you're using technology in ways to get better insights and really get to, really digging into who is your workforce, where are they going. So I'll just leave this up on the screen and happy to answer any questions. But think about this path and that it's a constant evolution and that, automation is just the foundation. I will end with that. Thank you very much.